All right, let's talk about something that's pretty much every homeowner's worst nightmare: water damage. It's so much more than just a big, wet mess. It's really a race against the clock. But here's the thing: if you understand the science behind the cleanup, that can be the absolute key to saving your home. So let's dive in.
Okay, I want you to picture this. You're at home and suddenly you hear that sound. You know, the one of water rushing where it should not be. Your stomach just drops. Your house is flooding. This isn't just about cleaning up a mess. It's a scientific race against time. And what happens in these first critical moments? Well, that's going to determine everything.
And believe me, that clock moves incredibly fast. In any water damage situation, time is your single biggest enemy. The damage doesn't just, add up over time, it actually multiplies. What starts as a seemingly small problem can spiral into a total catastrophe in just a matter of hours. I mean, just look at how fast this all unfolds. Within minutes, everything porous, we're talking carpets, furniture, you name it, is completely soaked. Give it just 1 hour and your drywall is already starting to swell and weaken. But the real danger zone, that's the 24-hour mark. That's when this stops being just water damage and starts becoming a serious health hazard, because that's when mold gets a foothold. Okay, so we've established it's a race against the clock, right? But it's also about knowing exactly what you're up against. Because, and this is super important to understand, not all water is created equal. Where that water came from, well, that changes the entire game.
So, professionals have a system. They classify water into 3 main categories. First up is Category 1, clean water. This is from something like a broken supply pipe. It's low risk. Then you've got Category 2, or gray water, which comes from appliances like your washing machine. It has some contaminants. But the one you really need to respect is Category 3, black water. This is the bad stuff. Sewage, floodwater from outside. It is grossly contaminated.
And this right here is exactly why that distinction is so critical. Black water isn't just dirty. It's basically a hazardous cocktail of bacteria and viruses. So if you're ever dealing with Category 3 water, calling a professional isn't a suggestion. It's an absolute necessity. You've got to do it to protect your family's health. So you're faced with this ticking clock and a potentially dangerous flood. How do the pros turn that chaos back into a home? Well, they don't panic. They have a playbook, a systematic, science-based process they follow every single time. It's like a precise multi-stage attack. They kick things off by using technology to find every last bit of hidden moisture. Then they extract all the standing water. But the most important part, really, is the drying, using all this specialized equipment to pull moisture out of the very structure of your home. And finally, they clean, sanitize, and use actual data to verify that your home is truly scientifically dry. Now, to follow that playbook, you're going to need a lot more than just a bucket and a mop. The reason a professional response is so effective really comes down to their highly specialized tech. It's gear designed for one purpose and one purpose only: to defeat water and moisture. This is the professional arsenal we're talking about. Thermal cameras that can literally see hidden moisture inside your walls. A powerful strategic combination of industrial dehumidifiers and air movers that create an environment where materials have no choice but to release that moisture. They use moisture meters to give you the hard facts, and those massive truck-mounted extractors, they can pull out thousands of gallons of water an hour. It's just on a completely different level. And this chart just brilliantly illustrates the massive gap between a DIY attempt and a professional job. A shop vac versus a machine that removes thousands of gallons per hour. A few house fans versus a strategic grid of high-velocity air movers. It's not just a difference in power, it's a difference in scientific capability. One approach is just managing a mess. The other is actually saving a structure. All right, the giant fans are blowing, the dehumidifiers are humming, and things are finally starting to look dry. But here's a critical question. What does dry actually mean? Because in restoration, if you get this part wrong, the job just isn't truly done. First, let's just set a realistic timeline. The active drying phase, with all that industrial equipment running, typically takes about 3 to 5 days. And that number isn't arbitrary. It's the time science tells us is required for all that absorbed moisture to migrate out of saturated wood, drywall, and subflooring. And this right here is probably the single most important thing to understand. What feels dry to the touch and what is scientifically dry are very rarely the same thing. That hidden moisture is a perfect breeding ground for mold. That's why the job isn't over until the moisture meters give the final all clear, confirming every material is back to its normal, pre-damaged state. So, what's the key takeaway? Trust the data, not just your eyes.
So, we've walked through the science of the disaster and the methodology of the rescue. You know how quickly the damage happens, you know what makes certain water dangerous, and you know the professional process for making it right. Which really just leaves one last question. What's your plan for when that clock starts ticking for you?